from today's epistle reading, which is 1 Corinthians, the first chapter, verses 18 to 31. I commend them on this little sheet to you to be read again at home and pondered over, and we'll ponder over them this morning. The message about the cross is foolishness to those who are perishing. But to us who are being saved, it is the power of God. The message about the cross is foolishness to those who are perishing. But for us, it's about the power of God. That's what that cross is about. And what happened on that cross is about for us. It's about the power of God. Yesterday, about 5 o'clock, I was coming home from a rather long meeting. It started at 10 that morning and just kind of kept going. And it was one of those meetings, it was a diocesan meeting, so I was headed home with another priest who lives up this way. We sat on the train. By the time we got on the train and we made our small talk with each other, we kind of had that agreement between ourselves that we would sit quietly on the train. We didn't want to talk no more. We were done. We'd been in a meeting all day, and we liked each other, but we didn't want to hear the sound of each other's voices. And the train was packed. I don't know what was going on in Manhattan yesterday, but the whole world was there, and the whole world was leaving when we were leaving. So we couldn't find seats together, and the only place that we did find a seat together was one of those where you're facing somebody else. Well, so there we were, facing somebody else who wanted to talk. Now, we're priests, so what are we going to do? Not talk. We weren't collared up or anything, so nobody knew what we were, but we knew what we were. And we knew that when this young man, and of course it had to be somebody young, we all know that the young have abandoned the church in droves. They have let us know they're having nothing to do with church. So here we are with a real-life young man who wants to talk, and we're priests. We had no choice. There we were, having to talk for an hour. And that's just the way it was. And it was an interesting conversation. It really and truly was. Once we kind of made that peace in our heads, and we did, it's like we nodded with each other. Okay, this is what it is. Let's dive in there and do what we are called to do. He started telling us about his story and his life. And it started in that rather charming way that people in that age, and remember being 25? Have you ever been as smart again as you were when you were 25? I mean, honestly, if the world was fueled on the energy and intelligence that is in our own mind at 25, all kinds of wonderful things would happen. You know, we know the time is going to come when some of that gets tempered later in life, but there is really something quite beautiful and precious about the energy, the hope, the absolute belief that they have the secret to making the difference in the world that they've inherited. And it's a lovely thing. It was wonderful listening to him. And it all started off really, really good. It all started in such an exciting way, listening to him talk about the American dream and about how he's been going for that. And how he really believes that everybody in this country has a shot. That was his word. Everybody in this country has a shot at making the kind of life that they want to have. And that's part of our national consciousness. I think it's part of our national religion. If every nation has a way that they look at the world theologically, that's ours, that God gave us a place where everybody has a shot, so to speak. Everybody's got the same chance. It's something that we believe in our country. Well, he went on to continue telling his story, and he said, you know, look at me. I'm 25, and I have it all. I started with nothing, and I'm waiting to hear how it was a rags to riches story. It was really kind of cute, because his nothing goes like this. Mom and Dad had planned for him to go to college and had been saving his entire life. So when the time came for college, he was ready. So his version of starting with nothing is slightly different than many other people in the United States. But to him, he started with nothing, And he's worked really hard to get through college, worked really hard in his first job. And so he's got a nice place to live. He's thinking about buying a house. He's driving the car of his dreams, has really nice clothes, just feels good about life in general, and is a good kid, a really good, genuine, generous person. Talked about how when his sister had her first baby, the gift that he gave to her was 6 months of salary. So she could extend her maternity leave and didn't have to go back to work. Which, I mean, that just says something about the caliber of person this guy is. I mean, he's not lost in his own dream here, truly is not. It did take a turn, though, our conversation. Right after that, when he said, maybe for the 6th time, look at me, I started with nothing. It was so hard for me not to erupt in laughter, because I'm like, you had everything! What do you mean? You started with nothing! You had everything! But he said that about the 4th or 5th time, and he said, that's why I have no sympathy for people who don't have things in the United States. I think this whole recession thing is a lie. I think if people want a job, they could get a job. If they wanted to feed their family, they could feed their family. And he said, I'm cynical towards it. My attitude is I'm not helping anybody because I can't tell who's telling the truth and who's telling a lie. Well, you know, the priests, it was as if the little lights went off over our heads. Ding, 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 ding! You know, we have much to talk about for the next hour with this young man. And it was a wonderful conversation where we were able to kind of talk about the fact that it's not a level playing field. It might feel like one for him, but in many ways it's not. In our own country, I go give the example of Appalachia because I have many friends who've done mission work in Appalachia. And Appalachia has pockets of poverty that look very much like what you might find in Myanmar, what you might find in South Africa, what you might find in Haiti today. The kind of poverty where people don't have shoes, no running water, don't know where the meal is coming. This is the United States. And in that kind of poverty, it's not unusual for people to have no sense of education and absolutely no vision for education for their children. And so it becomes generational poverty. If I believe that the best I can do is 6th or 7th grade education, then the best my child can do is 6th or 7th grade education. And their child is 6th or 7th. The option of graduating high school, going on to college or advanced degrees, it's not even in the picture. Not there at all. The playing field is not level. So for one person to look at it all and say, I started with the same nothing that they started with, it's 2 different versions of nothing. And all kinds of differences in between. Even people who aren't in that abject poverty that way. All kinds of differences without the kind of support that you need to get to that success. It's really hard to explain to somebody who believes that and believes it from their core, and it is the national mantra, that anybody can make it. Everybody has the same opportunity. Everybody's got the same chance. It sounds like foolishness. Total and complete foolishness. When a Christian turns around and looks at it and says, actually there's people falling through the cracks. There are people who do not have the same opportunity, and we want them to have it. Not enough to just identify, but to also say, and we want them to have it. We want them to have it because that's what our Savior wants. Our Savior, Christ, wants them to have it too. It sounds like foolishness, and what it actually is is the power of God. It is the power of the cross, because that is the thing. The cross transforms it all. When Jesus went to that cross, willingly, knowing what he was getting into, knowing the kind of pain he would physically feel, knowing the psychic and emotional pain that he would feel, wanting to be released from it, that he went there anyway, died there, and in a miraculous act, resurrected from that place, giving us the same. Life, death, resurrection. Life into eternity. It doesn't end when we take our last breath on this earth. That is the power of God and the power of the cross that goes into every single thing that we are doing. When we leave our house in the morning, we leave with the power of God. We leave with the cross going right along with us. From the very first moment that we experience something challenging that day, difficult that day, hard for us to cope with, that makes us feel guilty, that makes us feel incompetent, that makes us feel overwhelmed, we are not, because of the power of the cross. We're not stuck in that kind of logic that makes worrying about our neighbor and loving our neighbor and looking at our neighbor and wanting for our neighbor to have exactly what we have. Exactly what our children have. Exactly what the people that we love the most have. That's not foolishness to us. That's the power of God. That's God changing us into other people. That's God making it impossible, absolutely impossible, for us to get accustomed to it being any other way.